Welcome to the Nurturing Fathers Podcast, a show dedicated to helping men succeed at the most challenging and rewarding job they'll ever have, being a dad. Your hosts are Mark Perlman, the creator and founder of the Nurturing Fathers program, and his son, Corey Perlman, who facilitates the program at the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary and is also a father of 2 young children. It's time to add tools to your Nurturing Fathers toolbox. Mark and Corey, take it away.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Nurturing Fathers podcast. My name is Corey Perlman, and my co-host is back with me. We haven't scared him away through this age technology called podcasting. He's here with me. Mark Perlman, are you there?
I am here. Hi, Corey, and hi, everybody out there. I am thrilled to be with you again. He can't scare me away because this topic tonight is the most perhaps sometimes confusing and difficult topic that parents face, and it's the issue of discipline. It is the single issue that brings people into parenting courses more than others, and I think it's one that every person, including myself, has struggled with at different times during our parenting careers.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. This is a juicy topic. It's the one throughout the Nurturing Fathers program that gets the most, I would say, back and forth on. And it's a lot of these discipline type things are ingrained in our history, our fathering history, as well as generations upon generations of the past. And trying to figure out what to do in the future is a big deal to us as parents and as dads.
It's a big deal because, the consequence is huge. The way our children turn out is very much a function of how we parent them, how we father them. And discipline is one of the crucial lessons that children absolutely have to learn because they come into this world wild. They are undisciplined. They are impulsive. They have no idea the difference between acceptable behavior, being a good boy, being a good girl, or unacceptable behavior. That is all part of the educational process that starts around 2.5 years old and goes on perhaps for the entire arc of our lives together, but certainly until the age 18 or more. And you're absolutely right, Corey. Where we learn discipline very unscientifically and quite unstrategically is simply how our parents did it. We tend to replicate that. And then we're also informed by our culture in general, how it views corporal punishment, how it views discipline, what the word even means, and then by religion, church, whatever, who also weigh in and have something to say. So that's what kind of shapes each of our discipline. I think our parental history, probably the strongest shaping force. And we never get the script in a way. We never get the instruction manual as we would with any job that has this degree of complexity and the outcome is as important as it is.
So for background's sake, too, I think the word discipline has this overarching catch-all type thing, right? And I hear a lot when we're talking in the class, when we use the word discipline, I almost feel like sometimes we use it wrong, and when I learned from you in the teachings is when you start really looking at the root of the word, it's important to understand what exactly it means. So where does discipline actually come from?
Good question, Corey. And my goal here is to simplify this very complex subject. This I see as the first of 3 or 4 podcasts on discipline. Because it is so involved, I would like to break it down and do this in a sequential way. So the first question is, what is the root of the word? And if you look at it, discipline is disciple, is what is spelled in there. So it really goes back to what is the nature of that relationship of a disciple. And I see it as teaching, guiding, and being a role model. That is what the disciple learns from the master or the parent figure or the person that they're learning from. So discipline from disciple is all about teaching and guiding. So it is taking our wild, impulsive children and somehow nudging them and keeping them on the path of more desired behavior and less undesired behavior. And that's a long process. It's going to take time. It's going to take patience. And it's difficult for the child as well as the parents, because this is something totally new to the child. So how do you teach a child how to walk between the lines and happens when you walk outside the lines. It is a complex undertaking. But think of it first as teaching and guiding. That's all of what it's about. So when we look at what's effective, we really want to just simply ask, well, what are our best methods and ways of doing that? Teaching and guiding our children on the path of desirable behavior.
And so I had one guy recently in my class, talked about his experience growing up. And one of the things that he said was, my dad yelled, my dad screamed, cursed, and used his hands. And the biggest challenge for me growing up is I didn't understand what I had done wrong or how to fix it. He kept kind of talking about how he would just yell and I didn't understand why. Is that kind of where we're going in terms of missing the mark on discipline?
Well, that is a beautiful statement of how we miss the mark. And what's most beautiful about that, Corey, is that it's coming from the adult who's putting themselves in the position of the child who's the recipient of that. So that's very insightful. I would suggest that each of us as parents put ourselves in the role of our children, or when we were children. How did it feel to be the recipient of the type of discipline and behavior management that our parents and teachers wielded? So what he's saying to us there is, because the methods were so offensive in a sense, the hitting, the yelling, what he saw and felt was the strength and the negativity of those attempts, but he never got the point. The lesson, unfortunately, was learned in the flurry of anger, hitting, yelling, and every one of us has been there because it is a frustrating undertaking. The bottom line is not a moral one. It's not a judgment one. It's not good parents or bad parents. It's what's effective. What is our best hand to play in terms of helping our children learn how to be good boys and good girls and choose acceptable behavior? Now, the word choose comes in. That's very importantly, because we as parents don't instill this in our children by force. We don't just inoculate with this. We don't inject them with discipline. What we do is we take each mistake the child makes and each time they get it right as a learning opportunity. So the whole idea of choices is the most important thing. Choices and discipline is a learned behavior of the child by having consequences for the different choices they make. So the key approach here in a general way, and we will get more specific in future podcasts, is what we would refer to as choices and consequences. Giving the child choices is what empowers the child. It's what enables them to learn. It's their practice. Practice, practice, practice. The child chooses this impulse. The child chooses this impulse. The child chooses to throw his toy. I'd much rather him play with it on the floor. So choices and consequence would sound like this. If you throw your toy again, we're going to put them away. Choice and a consequence. But if you play with it on the floor, you and Daddy keep playing, we'll have a good old time. Choices and consequences. Now over and over and over again. Notice there's no yelling, there's no hitting, no screaming, because again, that tends to put a big red glare in front of us that the child can't even see or get through. So this keeps the focus on what is to be learned. And what it does is, with the positive consequence, it gives them a little pat on the back or a nudge. With the negative consequence, it shrinks their world a little bit. So they slowly but steadily learn that the payoff is much better, staying within the lines, choosing the desired behavior. That's a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old example. A 14-year-old example is, okay, you've got a curfew of 8 o'clock. So if you come in all week and respect your 8 o'clock curfew, yes, you can go to the dance Friday night and stay out an extra hour. But if you miss your curfew and I don't hear from you, you will lose your opportunity to go to the dance on Friday night. Choices and consequences. The world expands a little bit when they do it right. The world contracts when they do it wrong. With the constant repetition of that from mom and dad, the child learns that their best game is played in between the lines with the desired behaviors.
Yeah, we have a whole chapter in the program and probably podcast on using team sports as a metaphor for discipline and creating house rules. And I love it because it works so well for our family. And it makes so much sense about having these clear-cut rules in advance. So when something goes wrong, you don't have to have an emotional response to it. And I want to ask you about
part of the
that
problem,
in particular.
Corey, is that a lot of parenting is reactive and emotional. And it shouldn't be. It should be strategic. It is the strategic practice, the emotionality really just gets in the way, or not at our best game. When I'm feeling annoyed, ticked off at the kid, and personally offended, I'm probably not going to do my best discipline. When I take a deep breath and say, okay, how do I manage this? That's when we can continue the discipleship, the learning, discipline.
So let me ask you two questions specific to that then, because I mean, talk about practical, but sometimes people can probably listen to this. That sounds all well and good, but I'm short on sleep. I've got a, crazy 9-year-old that I've asked 14 times, to do something, whatever the case may be. And this last one, they literally just, threw food in my face, or, and I'm at an emotional standstill. Or I'll just give you another scenario. Maybe it's, they deliberately disobeyed in front of you, and you're emotional about it. How do you not respond emotionally and still be able to help them learn the proper consequence?
I want to just also say there are no easy answers or formulas to this. It's not an easy script, because if it was, I'd put a 13-page handout together, give it to everyone on the podcast and say, okay, job is done. What I would do first is I would give myself a moment, and I would give the child a moment. I want to get off of this enraged feeling and offended feeling. So I'd say to her very literally, look, I'm really angry at what you did. I don't want to talk about it now, but we have to talk about it. I'm taking 5 minutes. We'll get back to this. Or just give it over to your wife or your spouse. And if they're in a better frame of mind, let them take care of it, because hopefully you and she have talked this over and you have a joint approach, a team approach to this. It's very important. We'll talk more about that. But then when I'd come back, I would sit with her and calmly, without the anger, because I think we'll be much more effective. I'm going to say, look, sweetie, when you just did that to me, it really bothered me. It made me angry. It made me feel that you don't care about my feelings or what I'm asking you to do. Because you chose to do that and made that choice, you are not going to watch the movie tonight that we talked about before you go to bed. When you chose to throw that food, when you chose to say what you did, you chose to give that up. So I'm sorry, because I know you're going to miss it, but we'll have another chance. But it's clear, it's strong. I am using my authority, and they have to sacrifice, depending on the crime of the offense, losing something of large proportion or small proportion in proportion to the offense. If my son doesn't respect that 8 o'clock curfew, and I say, when you didn't come in at 8 o'clock, you showed up at 8:45, I say, you have chosen to give up the dance Friday night when you chose to break your curfew. Because the whole thing is putting your responsibility with them, because that's the only way they can learn. This is all about learning responsibility, the ability to respond to situations. When you chose not to come in or call me, you broke your curfew, you chose to give up the dance Friday night.
Yeah, and you can almost feel you're on the same team. So, it's like, I really wanted you to be able to do that. And I'm hoping you can make the right choices next time to be able to get there. I know it's going to be a fun experience. Yeah, so it's not the child versus the parent or me versus Talia. It's, we've set these rules in advance. They broke the rule. We're both on the same team. We're really going to work on it next time for you to be able to get there.
We worked on creating the rules together, and they're up on the refrigerator. We'll probably talk about next time creating family rules, because how can you expect a little boy to be a good boy or a girl to be a good girl if they don't know what good or bad is? This is what we expect. We don't talk back. Don't throw a toy.
Yeah, we had a guy this past week in the class, just exactly out of this example, Dad, where his daughter, 9 years old, just like mine, basically caught her in a really bad lie. And he was really emotionally upset about it, because first time I think they had gone into not just, saying one, it was just a blatant lie. And he gave her a 3-part punishment. It was pretty severe. No physical, but just, took some major things away and just really nailed her kind of to the wall with the consequence. So then he talked to his wife, and his wife was like, I understand that you're upset, but I kind of feel like you may have overstepped the consequence. I'm just not sure that kind of matched what happened. And after a night's sleep, and he thought about it, he agreed, and so I reminded him, and I remind myself all the time, especially as they get a little older, that when it comes to discipline, we don't have to provide the consequence at the time of the event. We have the opportunity to walk away and simply say before we leave, I'm upset that this happened. Mom and I are going to talk about it, or I'm going to go think about it. I'm going to come back and we're going to talk about it further.
I love
and that gives you the opportunity to go and process, right? Is that fair?
Just let them stew in it a little bit. Let them think about it. That's perfect, because that's what the whole thing is about. That's how responsibility and self-discipline is learned. So yes, that little break and say, I'm not prepared to give you the consequence now, but there will be one. And just like the little boy who didn't come in for curfew, when I say to him, you chose to give up the dance Friday night, I might follow it just as you said with, I'm sorry you made that choice. I know the dance is important to you. You will have other chances, but these rules are important to me.
So no matter what I do, Dad, to not even avoid, but even if I did try to avoid, it's a natural progression in this conversation to bring up hitting, and I think that when it comes to discipline and, there's obviously a spectrum of hitting. And I think most people who listen, back in the day with tools and belts and, and maybe some of that, still exists today, slapping in the face, abuse, that kind of thing. But then you bring it over a little bit and you start saying, spanking, or even just like a hard pat on the back, or, a grab on the ear, and things of that nature, that kind of in our mind, at least at the time, feels like a quick and appropriate consequence. Let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, like I say, we have 4 segments on this, and I am not going to take on the hitting issue in the sense of saying good, bad, do or don't. What I will do is give you some information now. And my first piece of information is it has been the only tool in our toolbox for many parents up to this point. In fact, when we say they're not disciplined enough, what we mean is they're not hit enough, or they're not grabbed enough, or they're not, yelled enough, so that we haven't gotten their attention in that way. That is equated to discipline, and discipline is so much more than that. It is tactical. In fact, what we've done when we start with the hitting question is my answer is you've just skipped over your most powerful behavior management tool when we posed that question. Oh, what? I thought that was our most powerful behavior management tool. No, it's praise. Your attention is your most valuable resource. Kids love your attention. I used to watch you and your brother swim and jump in the pool. Dad, Papa, watch me. Hey, watch what I jump. I watch my grandkids now. Watch me do this. Oh, did you see? Look what I did, Papa. They love your attention. So if you start paying attention to the behaviors you do want to see, you're going to see more of them. And parents tend to forget that. They tend to forget it, and they can get easily caught in this cycle of only catching doing wrong. Now think for a minute, if our attention is such a valuable resource and all of our attention is going to their mistakes and doing wrong, we're way, 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 way down the path already. We've missed that whole territory of catching doing right. You know how great they feel when you go over and say, hey, buddy, you've made your curfew all week this week. I am so proud of you, and I hope you enjoy the dance Friday night. Feels great. He's got the dance. His mom and dad are smiling, and they're really happy with him. He feels like a grown-up. That is a powerful piece of learning. We don't want to skip that. Then, knowing that parents are parents and kids are kids, it doesn't always stay on that side of the ledger. They will screw up, and sometimes screw up badly. But when you've chosen hitting as your main tool, the only choice you have is to hit more often and harder. And most parents, including myself, have reached the point where I don't really feel good doing that. And I'm not sure it's really good for the kid. So what we need to do is back that up and say, what other behavior management tools do we have when the kid screws up, when they make mistakes? And we will spend a whole podcast on what those behavior management tools are. Take something of value away. And when we tie the consequence to the learning, he's not following time and coming in on time, then time should be the consequence, something to do with that, so he loses valuable time. So we'll talk about all those things. Just to hit the hitting nail on the head, parents are going to do what parents are going to do, but that should be your last resort, if ever done. I don't believe in it anymore. The American Pediatric Association just came out with a huge report, the strongest stance and the strongest science behind hitting is actually damaging physically, emotionally to our children. So if there are other options and opportunities, I can only say, go with what's effective and learn to have as many tools in your tool bag as possible. We'll all be better off for it. My guess is for most of the dads out there, you won't have to go to hitting at a certain point if you really take seriously these other tools and put them in.
Thanks for listening to the Nurturing Fathers podcast. Have questions or comments? Join the conversation at facebook.com/nurturingfathers or email us at nurturingfathers@gmail.com.